This is your fishing report from Terrible at Fishing with your host Michael Ruffino. Please join me every Friday at 7 p.m. for a full hour of fishing news. But this week, June 17th, there is a lot going on. Lake of the Woods is at 67 degrees waters and increasing. The smallmouth are hitting shallow cranks. The largemouth are hitting jerkbaits. The trout are 6 feet or deeper, and you'll probably find them deeper. They do have 2 stockings this week and next week. This week, they're going to get 1,000 legals and 200 trophies. Next week, they're going to get 1,500 legals and 250 trophies. Please follow all of the stockings, not to catch the trout per se, but to catch the things that eat them. Fish Lake is at 74% volume. Their trout is hitting very well. Their stocking is this week at 2,000 legals and 500 trophies. And next week, they're going to get 2,250 legals. Diamond Lake is hosting the Blackbird Festival, where you can win up to $1,000. They're giving away prizes to a value of $5,000, and their trout are hitting very good right now. Howard's Prairie is seeing smallmouth and largemouth hit. They're using bladed jigs, swim jigs, and nets. Hyatt is also getting a largemouth on soft swim baits. Emigrant is if you use lipless or bladed jigs, the largemouth are hitting, but remember, crappie fishing is awesome in that lake. Willow Lake also is getting largemouth hitting bladed jigs and Texas rigs. So please, also in Willow Lake, they're at 63 degrees. They're going to be getting some really nice panfish in that lake. Lost Creek Lake. Wow. This week, they're going to get 10,000 legals put into that lake and 1,500 trophies. That is amazing. So 11,500 fish are going to be put into Lost Creek Lake. Agate is seeing good bluegill hit, and they are also at 92%. Please visit my YouTube channel, Terrible at Fishing, for lots of videos on how to catch all sorts of fish. Now that you know the fishing report for this week and next week, a little bit, you really should be let in on a little secret right now. The secret is to follow the stocking schedule of legal size trout. Legal size trout are basically about a 10-inch trout. Why should you follow that? Well, it's fun to catch a trout. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy catching trout. But I like catching the fish that eat a 10-inch trout. What eats a 10-inch trout, you ask? Good question. I'm going to tell you. Lots of big fish do. The German brown trout eat 10-inch trout. Largemouth bass will eat a 10-inch trout. And bigger. And they got big mouths. And so do brown trout. Now, the great thing about chasing the stocking schedule is learn where they put it in. Find out, because they don't tell the resorts and lakes where they're going to stock it. But for a few days after each of these stockings of illegals, big fish come and hit them. How do you catch these big fish? Well, you're going to use a big bait. That's what you're going to do. Now, I make baits, but and I'm about to stock Lake of the Woods with big baits again because they sold out real quick. You want to use basically a jointed or a swim bait that looks appealing to whatever's eating. Now, a swim bait or a jointed bait, or even a large Rapala, what you want to do, especially for the brown trout love to hit right around sunrise and sunset. And not too many lakes allow you to fish after sunset. So, Lake of the Woods is a 24-hour lake, and please be safe. Make sure you have appropriate lighting and things like that. Trolling with a very large bait is a fantastic way of catching these big fish. So, let's take a for instance. And let's look at Lake of the Woods, because I know Lake of the Woods pretty well, so you guys know that. And Lake of the Woods this week is getting 1,000 trophies, or they just did. I mean, by the time you hear this, they just got 1,000 trophies. So how do you catch them tomorrow? So find out which ramp they stocked it at. And next week, they're getting 1,500 trophies. So, what do? It's a great thing about Lake of the Woods, 24-hour fishing. So get there before sunup. So I'm talking about 4 a.m. I know. Lots of warm coffee, hot chocolate, whatever you need to put in a thermos and put it on your boat or next to you on the bank. You're going to throw a swim bait out there. You're going to let it sink about 6 feet, maybe 8 or 9 feet, 6 to 9 feet, right in there. And you're going to troll it, or you're going to retrieve it, whatever you want to do. So you're going to try to work a large area around around the stocking point. So let's say they put it in at Aspen. You're going to Aspen Point, and you're going to be fishing that area. If they put it in either at Sunset or the main ramp, you're going to be fishing Rainbow Bay. And if you've got a boat, great. I mean, really good. Even a kayak. Get out there and just troll for these huge German brown trout or the largemouth bass. Now, the largemouth bass are spawning right now. We're catching them, big ones, but they got eggs, so please put them back. And as for the brown trout, there are lakes like Diamond Lake and other lakes that just don't allow you to keep. It's illegal to keep a brown trout. Yes, it's legal at Lake of the Woods. But as a sport fisherman myself, I always put them back. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see me catch an 8 to 9 pound German brown. And there was no way I was going to keep that German brown. Just no way. I mean, that was in Lake of the Woods. And that was right after a legal stocking. So this is a great weekend. If you love evening fishing, I would recommend hitting Lake of the Woods at night. You'd be surprised at the big fish you catch at night at Lake of the Woods. I mean, look at Lost Creek Lake. They're putting in 10,000. They put in 10,000 legal size trout this week. You know, that lake is just busted with big catches at Lost Creek Lake. I don't know where they put it in, but 10,000 of them? I mean, it's just like a feeding frenzy out on the lake. And you're seeing this over and over and over again. You know, Fish Lake, you know, those tiger trout, which is illegal to keep, but they're fun to catch. You're going to catch a big tiger trout at Fish of the Lake. They're going to be hitting these things. So you're just going to have a great time this weekend. People see me out on the water, and they see me throw 6 to 8 inch baits. They actually think I'm pulling in a fish. Boy, did I fool them. It was just a bait I made. And that's these big baits, which by the way, just an FYI on big baits. Big baits are heavy. So my 6-inch swim bait weighs about 1.5 ounces with the beast hook on it. You want to make sure that your rod can handle 1.5 ounces, and you've got appropriate line on it that can handle you tossing something this heavy. Some of my baits weigh 3.5 ounces. So you want to make sure that your rod and your line can handle it. So please, right on the blank, just above the grip, you're going to see information on your rod that allows you to see what your rod can handle. Now, if you're trolling, you don't have to cast it. You can just sort of let it out. But if you're casting, you definitely don't want to throw, an 1.5-ounce bait with 4-pound test. I mean, you're just going to throw it away. It's just going to keep sailing away and say, wow, that was a really good cast. And then you notice that there's nothing on your line. So you want to make sure that you have the appropriate gear to do this. I have lots of different rods, and a heavy rod or even an extra heavy rod can go ahead and handle big giant baits. Now, some baits like Rapalas are very light, so you could go with a jointed or a large Rapala and go ahead and pull that through the water. And you can probably do that on a medium setup. So I want you to sort of take a gander. But this weekend is fantastic, everyone. I mean, you're going to be able to get such a big fish on hook this weekend. I know I'll be out there, and I'm calling the resorts and lakes, finding out, okay, where are they putting in? Because they don't tell them until after they do it, and they don't even tell them then. They just do it. It's like a secret truck that pulls up to a ramp. Now, the nice thing is, resorts like Lake of the Woods has camp hosts at all the ramps. And so the camp host can report back to the marina at, where the truck put in at. Now, the problem also about Lake of the Woods right now is that the water's warm. And this is a danger because they're getting stocked this week and next week, and I think maybe the following week, maybe. When the water gets warm, these are cold water fish. So if you go to the lake and you see floaters, dead fish, don't freak out. That just means the fish turned right instead of left or left instead of right, and it couldn't find cold water fast enough. So they just died because they couldn't acclimate fast enough. So you'll probably find some floaters on Lake of the Woods, and the osprey or the eagles will go ahead and help themselves with that, or even if they wash up on shore, other wildlife will go ahead and take care of it for them. So when you see these floaters, don't think that the water is bad. It's not. It's just warm. And they're putting cold water fish in warm water lakes right now. And when they do that, the fish have to make a 50-50 choice, either left or right, and hopefully they make the right choice and they find cold water quickly. More than likely, they won't be stocking aspen. That's way too shallow up there and too warm. So more than likely, they'll be stocking Sunset or the main ramp, which are across from each other from Rainbow Bay. And depending on which way those fish turn, they got to find that deep water quick. That means if you want to fish for the trout, you're going to have to go deep. As the water warms up, the fish are going to be diving. The kokanee are 40 feet over in Lake of the Woods, so that tells us that the trout are going deeper. Now, I am catching trout in 12, 15 feet of water, but I think you're going to have better success in 20 or 25 feet of water for the trout. So take that with a grain of salt, and hopefully this weekend you can actually catch a personal best, or what we call a PB. So go out there and try some nighttime fishing if you can at Lake of the Woods. They allow it. It's legal. If you're on the water, make sure you have appropriate markers and lights. So thank you. Let's go on to the next segment and enjoy our sponsors. Welcome back to Terrible at Fishing. Well, thought I'd talk to you about bait making. I make a lot of baits. It kind of started for me to get back to airbrushing. My wife and she met me when I was truly a starving artist. And we've been married over 37 years, and some 39 years ago she met me, and she came into Aaron Brothers Art Mart where I worked. And there's where I asked her out on our first date. And life got busy on me, and I stopped painting for the most part. I still created a lot of stuff. I've written 8 books and done some artwork. But my passion for fishing, I figured, okay, let's meld the two together. And so I thought it'd be fun to learn how to paint baits. YouTube has given us a great tool to learn. And there are so many. I mean, on my channel, excuse me, on my channel, Terrible at Fishing, I have a playlist just on me painting baits and creating baits. So if you ever want to learn how to paint baits, you can go to my YouTube channel. You can see what you need to buy, and you can see the different techniques that I employ. But it became kind of fun. Well, it still is very fun. And you'd think it'd be harder than it really is, but it's not too hard at all. What designs do I choose? Well, it really is a mood thing. I pick colors very specifically to lakes and for species. I mean, I've told you in previous broadcasts that bass don't see blue, but trout do. So a lot of people, they'll go ahead and buy baits that work in color schemes that the fish can see. As you learn more about fish, it's easier for you to create a paint scheme that works. Sometimes putting stripes on a lure gives that lure flash, sort of like a multi-frame picture, and you're just watching it tick by. And that's what stripes on the side of a lure does. And it catches fish's attention. Sometimes they just go for a plain color. Sometimes black is a great bait color to fish with. Usually we use that in stained waters, but it is kind of amazing and surprising. In clear water, like at Lake of the Woods, that black can work so good. So sometimes it doesn't have to be extravagant. Most paint schemes are designed to attract fishermen and before the fish. In fact, sometimes I make a mistake on my baits, and I don't sell it because a fisherman will see the mistake and says, "Oh, I don't want to buy that. It's sloppy." Fish don't care. Fish just don't care. I have a soft white bait that I used last week, and when I put the black spot on it, I sort of double tapped it on one side, so it's not a perfect circle. So I didn't put it in for sale, but I put it in the water for the fish to catch. And you know what? Fish don't care. They hit it. So don't look for a perfect bait. Just look for a bait that works. When you buy my baits, they're not going to be perfect. And each bait is going to be slightly different from the next because they're all hand-painted and hand-created. Fish don't care. They don't care if there was a brush mark that went awry on it. Again, that's to catch the fisherman, not the fish. I've recently started making soft plastics, melting plastic and at 350 degrees, and then pouring it into molds, either injecting it with an injector or hand pouring it into a hand pour mold. I've always wanted to try this, but I had to sell a lot of baits to earn enough money to set up the my shop with all the equipment. And to set that up, it cost about $500. And then I can start making soft baits. But I didn't want to just make worms or anything like that because, I mean, it's just not worth it, to be honest. So I picked a big swim bait that I could paint and a funny looking bait called a dancing bones. This thing's crazy looking. Again, you can find it over at, Lake of the Woods sells my baits, just FYI. And, or you can just contact me directly and I'll try to make you a bait that you enjoy. But I'll tell you something about these big swim baits. They're 6 inches. I hand pour it. They have a hook slot on it. And you can fish these things through anything. I put an 8/0 hook. It's a big hook through it. It's a weighted hook. It's a company called Owner. It makes these things called beast hooks. And it just fits perfectly inside this bait. But you could swim this through grass and weeds and brush and throw it in the middle of a lily pads and get it to swim in between the lily pads, bounce it off of logs. It's a pretty amazing bait. And what I do, I basically just paint it a single color. I mold it as a single color. I can mold it in multiple colors if I want, and I've done that. But typically I'll mold it in one color, and then I start painting it with my airbrush. I can make a white base look like a beautiful rainbow trout. I can make it look like crappie. I can make it look like a perch. I can make it look like anything I want. Or just something so foreign that the bass is going to say, wonder what that is. So, making your own bait, you know what works in your waters. Now, you go to Lake of the Woods, you buy my baits, you know what works in that. I know what works in that lake. And so those baits are specifically designed for Lake of the Woods. So if you look on the wall, you see something that says terrible at fishing, buy it. Because, they work. They just work. And I change their baits by the seasons. So soon you're going to see a lot of topwater baits or shallow dive baits up there. And you're just going to, have a good old time. Nice thing about these big swim baits is that they're slow sinking, so I can fish it at any depth I want. I could put it on the floor of the lake, or I could swim it shallow. And I can have a good old time with that. Soft plastics takes a different technique for some of it. I mean, a swim bait, you don't have to have too much of a different technique. But for, let's say, the dancing bones or a craw or something like that, we put those on jigs typically, or as a trailer. Now, what's a trailer? A trailer is just something that's added to a skirted jig. A jig has a skirt, lots of little, strands attached to it. And we have on a jig what we call a primary and a secondary motion. So secondary motion is something that's caused by a primary. So we put a trailer on it that matches the color of the jig. So if you got a white jig, you can put a white trailer. So to get the point. And the trailer will flap and move, which causes the skirt to move. And it looks like it's kind of one thing. The whole point of a skirt is to give it flash, to give the bait the appeal to a fish, like glistening off of scales. And it just adds to the trailer by giving it more flash. You don't put a black bait trailer on a white jig. You just don't do that. It ruins the illusion to the fish. So match the color of the bait, the trailer, to the jig, and vice versa. And make sure that as the trailer flaps and moves and wags, that it has the ability of moving the skirt. If it's too long, you're wasting it, the primary motion, because it's moving, but it's not moving the skirt. So you want that primary motion of the trailer to move the skirt. That's the secondary motion. If you do that, you'll have more success. So match the trailer to the jig and don't make it too long. It's okay to just cut off part of the trailer so it fits the jig. I do it all the time. In fact, every fisherman that knows how to set up a jig will do it. So if we have a 4-inch trailer and we need a 3-inch, we just cut an inch off. Or we put a 3-inch on it. Whatever. So you can do that. As for a swim bait, a swim bait, a soft swim bait, has a single hook in it. And it's an upturned hook, typically. So it hides on the back of the swim bait, which gives it probably the truest weedless bait that you can have. Now, there are jigs that are called weedless. They have a little, thing that, little hard plastics that stick up that keep the hook from being fouled. I think that's just an illusion. I still get weeds on it, but it might get less. I don't know. I just don't have real good success with it. So when something says weedless, look at the design of it. Upturned hooks work best. So you want so they don't catch on things below it. You can bounce it off of wood, a tree limb or something like that, a log under the water or a rock. It bounces off, and you don't have to worry about it snagging it. That's an upturned hook. And you'll find that a lot on jigs. You'll find it a lot on soft swim baits. You'll find it, you just find it a whole lot. On underspins is a good example too, which you talked about. So look for a hook on a lure that is upturned, that the point is, facing the top of the water, not the bottom. And you'll find yourself catching or fishing it in a little more thicket of debris and doing a better job. One more jig to consider, which will go into a more detailed explanation, is something called a chatterbait or a bladed jig. It's a jig with a blade in front of it, and it chatters. It'll go ahead and shake in front of it. This gives it a lot more flash and a different type of motion on it. Chatterbaits are very, very effective baits. But again, they're skirted, and you have to put a trailer on them to have a primary motion to affect the secondary, which is the skirt, making it flutter in the water. If you match the colors and fish it at different depths, you'll find yourself catching a lot more fish. And chatterbaits or bladed jigs can get down to a 1/16 of an ounce on up. So you can go small, you can go large. And jigs are the same way. Check out at the sporting goods store jigs or swim baits. Remember, bigger baits catch bigger fish. Smaller baits catch more fish. They just don't catch big fish. So you take care, and we'll see you in the next segment. Welcome back to Terrible at Fishing. Fishing, it can be challenging. And when you go with a guide, you really are hiring an expert, aren't you? somebody who knows the waters, somebody who knows technique, somebody knows how to work that bait in a way that catches fish. And it requires something of each and every one of us. Humility. Yeah, it's hard when you've been fishing for a lifetime to go with a guide and be, submissive to all of his suggestions and do what he tells you. It's tough, I know. I recently went on a wonderful trip on the road, and I had to go onto that boat assuming that I know zip. Just nada. And um, he was he was very good. He knew exactly where to put the bait. He knew exactly how to have me hold the rod. I've been fishing forever. I'm a really good, bass fisherman. And I basically had to sort of set my ego aside and listen and do what he told me to do. And in the end, I had a great day. Caught a half a dozen fish, a couple big steelhead. That's what we paid for, right? It was a gift from my wife. Why would I ruin a gift from my wife by having an ego? And when we go fishing, we have to sort of set that aside and enjoy the moment. Not just try to catch a fish, but enjoy the surroundings. I'd never been on the road, never been in a drift boat. So it was really exciting for me to be in a new place, in a new vehicle, and with new friends. So Shane and Bill, the other fishermen, great people. And Shane's got a dog, and it was just a great day. It was more than just fishing. And setting your ego aside to learn is a necessary part of fishing. So we have terrible at fishing this show. So in this segment, I have told you we're going to talk about catching more fish. And I have told you how to catch a good technique on catching trout, which is a water bobber technique. And catching trout it's pretty easy. That's why a lot of people enjoy doing it. There are so many other fish in this area. There really are. And even though I enjoy bass fishing, because of the challenge, I have to learn new techniques. I've got a half a dozen rods, all set up with different lines, different reels, different sensitivities, different actions, all because I want to learn a new way of catching fish. And I have to think about, all right, last week, we talked about topwater fishing. Topwater fishing is a different technique, something that everybody can do, but it does require a little bit of touch. And when I fish, it's hard for me to describe everything that I do with the rod, and because there is a touch and a feel to fishing. When I teach people ice fishing, for instance, I usually take the tip of their little rod and I touch it, and I'm showing them what a fish looks like when it gets on the bait, because it's very supple and very soft. And then I put a fish on the bait, basically. With my fish finder, I'm able to see the bait and the fish, and I want them to feel it and to see and touch the rod what to expect. And once they do that, they start pulling up fish left and right. So we're going to talk about catching more fish. So you know how to catch a trout. Trout's pretty simple. You use a spinner or a water bobber and you're good to go. But you got to get it down to where the fish are. Right now, well, they're diving. But let's talk about crappie fishing. A crappie, a black crappie, is one of the most tastiest fish that you can get out of a lake. And it's absolutely fun. A crappie has a very small mouth and has what we call a paper mouth. That means it's sensitive, and they are fragile fish. You're not going to set the hook on a crappie like you would a big bass. What do you use for crappie fishing? Well, use a tiny little jig. They're called crappie jigs. And there are brands out there, Crappie Magnet, and things like that. Just a small little jig. And you could put a small finesse soft plastic on it. You could put a worm on it. You could put power bait on it. And a crappie will gravitate to it. Crappie cannot see below themselves. So if you put the bait below them, they're not going to see it. They can see forward and they can see above them. Crappie typically like to swim at about 5 to 6 feet below the surface. They're a sort of what we call a suspended migrant. And so you want to put the bait above them. So regular bobbers work. So let's say you throw it out there and you've got, 3 feet of leader below the bobber. Just toss it out there, usually around cover. So you can fish around docks, piers, branches, just about anywhere that it has cover. They like vegetation and rocks, so to be honest, you can find them just about anywhere. And the crappie are quick hitters. So when they hit, you've got to be quick to just lift the tip. You're not going to set the hook hard. You're just lifting the tip of your rod to set the hook. And then start reeling them in. But your reflexes must be fast, because a crappie can spit out a hook as fast as they take it in. And so your reflexes have got to be really, really, really fast. And that's the fun part about crappie fishing. Now, where do you go for crappie? So, Lake of the Woods has a bunch of crappie, but nothing real big there. I have found Gerber Lake is just south of Bonanza. That is a very good crappie lake for us, fairly local, and within a decent drive. You can catch good sized crappie there. Another, about an hour and a half away over in Ashland, is Emigrant Lake. Emigrant Lake has probably got the biggest crappie I've ever seen in the area. Worthy of an hour and a half drive, and you can catch crappie there. I mean, there's no limit on crappie, by the way. Crappie is a simple fish, and you can catch big crappie in Emigrant Lake. It is my favorite lake to fish for crappie. I mean, it's got other fish there, but lots of other fish, bass and stuff like that. But you have to go crappie fishing. Use a very light rod, something that flexes fairly easy at the tip, very sensitive, because they're going to hit quickly. So you want to feel it as soon as they hit. You want a rod with a good backbone, which means a good portion of the rod is stiff. So you can set the hook with your wrist, just lifting up, and that hook will stay set inside the crappie's mouth. And then just reel up. Crappie is one of the most delicious fish that you can catch and pull out of a waterway. And they're easy to clean. A lot of people think that the bones are hard, but they're not. Watch a video or two on how to clean a crappie. Crappie are very easy to clean, and they make an incredible fish taco. They're just really good tasting meat. So use a very small jig. Now, I also love to use underspins. And using a 1/8 ounce underspin, something small, works very, very well. What is an underspin? It's a hook, a jig. It's got a little bit of weight on it and a little hook on it. But below the hook, there is a double barrel swivel with a willow blade attached to it, and it spins. Put a soft plastic on that, very small, and we're talking 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches, and you're going to pull that through the water. An underspin is one of my favorite baits to pull through the water because the hook is upturned. So I can fish it at any depth, and it won't snag on the things below it. It's pretty nice, huh? And because of it's got this willow blade, it has a lot of flash, a lot of brightness to it, and it gets the fish's attention. I can work larger sets of water with a lure. See, with a bobber, you're only working that little bit of water and hoping that there's some fish there. If you know where the fish are, it works great. But with a lure, I could toss it and work all the water between me and where it lands. And it works really, really well. Again, swimming a underspin is really, you can catch just about anything with it. Underspins come in all sizes, so you could get bigger ones if you want and catch bass or trout or whatever you want. And you can do it at any depth that you want. But remember, crappie is going to be in the upper water column. So as soon as you toss this little itty bitty bait out there, you're going to start dragging it in after 1 or 2 seconds. When a lot of people, when they throw a bait, they throw it out there and they start reeling in. Fish are at different depths, like I just said you about crappie. Crappie's at 5 to 6 feet. Bass, deeper typically. Trout, deeper typically. Definitely lately. And when you throw a bait out there, you have to understand its sinking rate. So you do this, you throw this in front of you and watch it sink and count. And get a feel for its sinking rate. So as soon as it hits the water on a cast, you understand how fast it's sinking. And you count 1, 2, 3, and then start reeling in, if that's indeed the number you want to throw it at. That is key to catching fish. You want to catch more fish? Fish at the depth that they are at, and understand the sinking rate of your lure. Do that, and you will enjoy catching a lot of fish. But give crappie a shot. You got Lake of the Woods, pretty good. Gerber, very good. Emigrants, epic. Give it a shot. You will be surprised how good they taste, how easy they are to clean, and you can catch 50 of them if indeed you want. That is a fun family fish fry. All right. I hope this helps you guys. Welcome back to Terrible at Fishing. Well, in this segment, we're going to feature a local fisherman. This is something I want to do on a regular basis, so if you guys out there that want to be on the show, please just email me at terribleatfishing20 2019 at gmail.com. That's terrible at fishing at 2019 at gmail.com. Now, Billy Scott, he's a local fisherman and a comedian that performs locally. And Billy, he uses fishing a lot like me, sort of therapy. And fishing is very therapeutical, as many of you have discovered. And Billy, he is a trout fisherman, as you're going to find out, and you're going to see why he enjoys fishing. So let's go into the interview and meet Billy Scott. And thank you, Billy, for being on the show. Billy, um, so how long you lived here in Klamath Falls?
So I was born at Merle West Medical Center in 1984, and I moved away 2013 and came back 2022. Other than that, I've lived here my entire life. We moved up to Salem for a little bit because my when my son was 4 years old, he started having seizures really bad. He ended up having to go to Dornbecker's about once a week, and we thought, well, it'd be a lot easier if we were closer, but I wasn't moving to Portland anywhere near it.
Yeah.
So we chose Salem and stayed there until Dornbecker's fixed him and he's seizure free now.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
So decided it was time to come back here because I know this area.
I love this area. I chose it to retire in.
Yep.
So have you been fishing your whole life?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been fishing. Honestly, most of my fishing growing up was on the Klamath River, just down in the canyon. But I've fished every body of water there is around here.
So you like going for trout, steelhead,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
some salmon.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I like bank fishing. I like to fly fish sometimes or I'll spin cast. It's just I like the versatility of bank fishing. Just bring whatever pole I want to hit with.
do you fish any? I know what's your favorite? So is that's your favorite bait or your favorite method is bank fishing on a
Yeah.
river?
Yep.
All right, that's your favorite. Well, I don't do much bank fishing on a river. I usually just float it.
Oh yeah.
Um, so so in bank fishing, how do you bank fish on a river?
So for me, the in the Klamath River Canyon, it's when I was a kid, probably 3 or 4 or 5, somewhere in there. First time my dad ever took us out, we started using. I still remember, he always used. He swore by brown and gold rooster tails,
Yeah.
and you just find a good spot on the bank where there's a hole nearby. We found a couple of good ones over the years. Down on the Frame Ranch, there's one spot that I've never been skunked at, and even down below that, a couple of miles past what we growing up, we affectionately called it the Great Divide because it's a single lane portion of the road. And on one side of it, you fall down the cliff. On the other side of it, straight up the hill. So there's either way, you're not making it back. So we call it the Great Divide. But once you get past that, there's another spot down by the river. And I've never caught anything less than 12 inches out of it, which for
And so,
rainbow trout down there is pretty good.
so you're using rooster tails, casting them upriver, letting them float down past you, and then
Just
pulling it in.
yeah, just cast and reel it in as it comes back down toward you.
Good. And what kind of gear do you use?
Uh, Honestly, these days I go with the Shakespeare Ugly Stick and the Shakespeare Ugly Spin. Honestly, I'm cheap and they're good. They're good value for the money. Uh,
They
first,
are.
first fishing poles I started with when I was a kid was Eagle Claw because my dad was a big fan of Bimart. And I mean, at the time, they were one of the better outdoor stores available in this town.
Still
So,
is.
yep,
I mean, when it comes to tackle, it's hard to beat Bimart
yep,
in this town. I cannot believe we don't have a great fishing store in this town. Well, besides river fishing on a bank, do you ever do any lake fishing?
yeah, yeah. I've fished on the Klamath Lake a couple of times in a boat. Fished on Fish Lake in a boat, and fished on Lake of the Woods in a boat. All in my younger years. Honestly, I moved back here from Salem 2 years ago and haven't done a whole lot of fishing since then. But in my younger years and growing up in Klamath, I used to fish a lot more.
And your favorite target is a trout.
Oh yeah, rainbow trout.
Seems like everybody wants rainbow trout in this area.
Just it's honestly for me, they're just the easiest thing to catch around here.
They are the easiest thing to catch. I
You
mean,
can catch them just about everywhere, and as long as it's the right time of year, I mean, some of them trout in the Klamath Lake get huge,
oh, they are.
and as long as it's April, May, I'm fine eating them out of there. It's not till June, July, August that algae starts
Yeah.
making them taste like crap.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yep,
But yeah, I'm a bass man in trout country. So I mean I catch trout, but that's because they're dumb. They
I
hit
love
my crankbaits.
I love bass fishing. Honestly, my favorite way to bass fish is to get out on a lake somewhere near some deadfalls or some reeds or something and just pop out in front of it with my fly pole and some bass poppers.
Oh yeah.
And bass poppers land on the water and just pop, pop, pop. And
Yep.
every time, I've actually got a picture I could share with you. Um, my dad had some buddies out at the lake or out at the base, and they had their own private lake on a piece of property they bought.
Nice.
They were getting ready to sell it, so they decided to let us come fish it as much as we wanted for the day. And my dad and my brother, of course, spin casting with bass bait, and I was out there with bass poppers all day. And I got a picture of me sitting in front of an entire table full of bass that we took home that day, and they let us. They
Oh,
just,
they let you take it home, huh?
oh, yeah, yeah, they let us take. They were getting ready to sell the property, and
Okay.
the new owner was planning on poisoning the lake because he didn't want bass. So they told us, they were like, "This is the situation. You might as well come get as many as you can."
Wow.
It
Yeah,
made
the
some
I ba bass are the smart fish, and so I mean in July and August, Lake of the Woods all top water. You want
Yep.
to use a popper. I mean, it's almost there now. We're at 67 degrees there, so um,
My
it's really close to top water.
my birthday this year, my birthday's on July 31st, and my best friend Lauren's birthday is June or July 29th. And for years we've been talking about, hey, let's do a joint birthday camping trip. We've never done it, but this year we already reserved the spots out at Fish Lake, so I'll be
Okay.
out there just in time to fly fishing those reeds.
Yeah. 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 I like hitting the lily pads. So the lily pads are fun with a nice hollow body, and it's like throwing a grenade. As soon as they hit the water,
Yeah.
you get a blow up, off right underneath it. It's so much fun.
The
So
biggest trout I've ever caught was in Klamath Lake, and it was on a fly pole with a damsel fly in August.
yeah.
Problem was I couldn't keep it. I mean it's in August. There's no,
Yeah,
but
it's pretty bad.
I mean it was probably 7, 8 pounds, just
Yep.
gigantic trout. Although they've got one hanging on the wall in there that's 13 pounds, so it really didn't, but it was huge.
Yeah, that I over by Comfort Point up there, just south of Rocky Point. I'll see schools of massive trout over there.
Yep.
Um, I like I said, I mean, it's not like I don't fish trout. I don't. It's not like I don't know how. I just like bass, and
So
everybody around here fishes trout.
my older brother, he grew up around here just like me, trout fishing his whole life, moved to Kansas with his wife 5 years ago, and he's obsessed with bass.
Yeah,
He started molding his own lures now.
yeah. So did I. So did I. I started making.
Yep, that's
Yeah,
what he's
there's
doing.
the 6 inch swim bait, and I've got some other molds, but that's the one. I actually hand paint these. These are all hand painted.
So those would be good for
So,
those are good for
huh?
sea bass.
Well, these are great for largemouth.
Are they
You
great for
can,
those?
oh my goodness, yeah. You put an 8/0 hook through this, and then this thing, you can just take it right through any obstacle. So you could toss it in the lily pads, and you can swim it between the lily pads over the any kind of obstruction through grass, because the hook hides on the back. I
Oh
mean, this
yeah.
thing is completely beadless, and they're just easy. Or then I make these big giant. This is a topwater wake bait, believe it or
Yeah.
not. This is so fun. So much fun. I catch big fish. I'll throw 6 to 8 inch baits out at Lake of the Woods, And people are thinking I'm pulling in a fish, but I'm throwing it back out. I go, no, that's my bait.
Yep.
All
I was
right. Well, I I think it's great that you do river fishing because I don't do much river fishing.
yeah.
Well,
I
down in
mean,
California, we don't have that many rivers.
honestly, my favorite method to fish is fly fishing.
Yeah.
If I problem is I just fly. There's not enough people around here who fly fish. It's kind of
Really?
a yeah. There's not a whole lot of people around here anymore that I can find that fly fish.
I saw somebody today fly fishing at Lake of the Woods. I mean,
And
um,
nowadays the fly lines and things are so expensive.
is it?
It's oh yeah, fly lines like 40 bucks a roll. It's getting insane. So that's why I primarily when I fish nowadays I spin cast, but I do love fly fishing. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's not boring at all. And
No.
the reason I got into fly fishing, I fished Spring Creek when I was a kid. And one day there was a spawner coming down from the Williamson into the creek, and this trout was easily 5, 6 pounds. All the fish you see in there are 8 to 10 inches. So seeing something like this in Spring Creek was amazing. And everybody along the bank is throwing lures at it, and it wasn't touching nothing. And some guy walks out of the woods with a fly pole, does this. First time it hits the water, that fish hits it. He reels it back in, pulls the fish out, and walks away like as if by magic. As if he came out there just to embarrass everybody else on the bank. That was his life goal, and he achieved it that day.
You got to act like you've been there and done that before. So,
Well, what I realized was that part of the reason I love fly fishing and I want to get more into it is all you got to know is what kind of insects are available around that area for the fish. Then you just grab a fly that looks exactly like them. That was how I caught that giant fish out at Rocky Point. Was just on a blue damselflies because I see
right.
them flying all over out there.
Yeah, no, Rocky Point's probably well, that's where I go fishing when I'm fishing Upper Klamath. I mean,
Yep.
I've done Eagle Ridge, that area, but um, yeah, I don't know. It's just me,
Rocky.
but I know a lot of people. The nice thing about having you on the show is like everybody here, they love trout fishing. Even at Lake of the Woods, people are trout fishing,
Oh yeah.
even though there's no such thing as a natural trout in that lake. Those are
Nope.
all plants and holdovers.
Yeah. My next hopefully fishing purchase, if my wife will ever let me, is one of those just little single seater pontoon boats.
Yeah,
Uh, I've already got flippers and a wetsuit, so I just need some. I just need the pontoon boat and then get out there on the lake, and it's great to fly fish on the lake like that. You
yep.
get out there during the early morning when they're out hunting. That's a great way to catch trout.
Yeah, that was pretty much my first on water boat was one of those.
Yep.
And I've kind of graduated this and that, did kayaking, and then now I've got my boat. So, but yeah, I mean, it's getting on the water is the best way to fish.
Oh yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't understand the advantage of casting towards shore instead of away from it. There's a big advantage there,
Oh
and
yeah.
you just get a lot more hits.
Yeah. Every time.
Yep. Yep. Well, I hope you enjoyed the interview with Billy. I know I did. And look forward every week as I search and find all of you local fishermen. And we'll probably be doing interviews out on the lake as I find you, if indeed you're game for it, or as you contact me. The sport of fishing attracts everybody. Doesn't matter what age you are, doesn't matter what sex you are. It is just an enjoyable sport. And as Billy and I have enjoyed the sport, it gives back to us in ways that you just cannot imagine. With Billy, he needed this tranquil moment in therapy to help get through his son's seizures, and he enjoys it today. So tune in every week and meet somebody else of Klamath Falls.